Hi, and welcome to this video where we are going to be looking at Paper 1, Question 5, specifically at the description option on that question. We're going to be looking at how to plan and structure your response to that question. So let's take a look. To score in Level 2 on Paper 1, Question 5, your response needs to have some evidence of planning. It needs to seem as if you have structured and planned it out so that every paragraph has its own purpose and leads into the next one in a sensible and meaningful way. Now, that can be difficult to do, especially under the time pressure of the GCSE. So, following a writing structure is a good, easy way to make your response seem a lot more planned, because it will be a lot more planned. In this lesson here, we're going to focus on one way that you can structure a descriptive response. That would be drop, zoom, shift, return, leave. So we will be looking at the first of our 4 content categories in how we write interesting ideas and link them together, with a little bit of number 4 too, about how we structure our paragraphs, though we're focusing more on how the paragraphs relate to each other. So let's have a look at it then. Suppose you have this picture and this prompt on the GCSE. The prompt is write a description of a busy city center as suggested by this picture. Now, a lot of students would correctly be able to identify quite a few things to write about here. And they would say, okay, well, I see a big crowd of people, and I see some taxis, and some billboards, and other signs, and I see McDonald's, and there's some tall buildings here, and they might notice this big cross thing, looks like a war memorial maybe. And then they start to run out of steam. And if they've been thinking about using paragraphs, and maybe they've looked at the previous lessons, they might then be thinking, okay, so I could do a paragraph about the crowd, then a paragraph about the taxis, and a paragraph about the McDonald's, and then a paragraph about the buildings. And that would be an okay response, but it wouldn't be a very planned seeming response. Yes, it would be better than if it were just a list of random things, but the paragraphs wouldn't really relate. I mean, and there wouldn't be any order to them. Like, why write about the crowd and then the building? Why not the building and then the crowd? And so we still probably wouldn't score very high on organization. So there are so many things in any picture that you could focus a paragraph on. But in order to get a structured and organized response, each paragraph that you write needs to have a purpose. It needs to do something. And one good way we can do that is with this structure here: drop, zoom, shift, return, leave. Each paragraph does one thing. One drops, one zooms, one shifts, one returns, and one leaves. Hungry for a bit more? Well, let's take a look. So, drop. Drop paragraph is where you are dropping the narrator right into the setting. This is where they arrive at this setting. And this is where you're going to want to give an overview of what the narrator is noticing. Use your senses, all of your senses here. Give the big general description of what you see. And maybe this is a big key. Give yourself some background here. Why is your narrator here? What has brought your narrator here? Are they a tourist in this city for the first time? Perhaps. Are they going to work? Perhaps they live here. Are they perhaps a pickpocket looking to steal from somebody? Perhaps they are a spy and they're trying to complete some kind of a mission. Or perhaps they're visiting family. However, you give your character a backstory, if they have one, if they have a strong voice, a strong identity, it'll make everything else in their description more interesting. For instance, this big crowd here, if you're a tourist and this is your first time in a big city, you might be really impressed with all these people. On the other hand, if you live here and work here, you might be like, ugh, traffic again. It's going to take me forever to get to my work. Or if you're a pickpocket, you might be thinking, oh, look at all these people. Look how distracted they are. This guy's taking a picture. Yeah, probably could just reach my hand in. Or if you're visiting family, maybe you're thinking, okay, well, now I'm scanning looking for my cousin's face because my cousin said she'd meet me here. But what was she thinking? This place, it's so busy. Whatever you're writing about, you'll probably find you have a lot more to say about it if you've given your narrator a background, a backstory. Next paragraph is zoom. This is where you're going to be zooming in on something. You could zoom in on just about anything in this picture here. So here we can zoom in on, say, this taxi and all these people who are queued up sitting there. We could describe it with lots of detail. We can say what people are doing there. We can use a technique to describe them. Could say they're all lined up like a row of ducklings behind their mother duck. I could maybe like even link the mother duck to the yellow color of the taxi maybe. And what I could also do, especially if I give my narrator a strong backstory, is I can give my narrator's reaction to it. If I'm a tourist, I might be thinking, oh man, there's such a huge queue of people here. I bet they all want a taxi. Oh, I'll never get one. If I'm trying to get to work, I might be thinking, ugh, all these tourists sitting around are blocking the way. I'll have to push through them. If you're a thief, you might be thinking, okay, so there's an opportunity, but oh, everyone's looking in the same direction. No way I can get anybody over here. I'll have to maybe see if I can push through them when, or if I'm trying with my cousin, I might be thinking through each person down the line if any of them remind me of my cousin. And I can write more than one of these Zoom paragraphs, especially if I'm a quick writer and I know I need to fill a lot of space. I might find something else that catches my interest and write about that too, like this guy here. If I'm a tourist, maybe, hey, he's taking a picture, I'll be taking a picture too. Maybe I'll talk with him about his photos. Or if I'm trying to get to work, again, maybe he's in my way and I'm thinking, okay, come on, move it, buddy. So annoying. And if it's as a bit of a bonus, something I could do to be really good is linking the ideas between the two paragraphs. So I could say how it's similar or show a contrast. If I'm trying to get to work, I could link this guy here to that queue of people and talk about how they're both obstacles to me getting across the road. Whereas if I'm a pickpocket, I might contrast them and say, okay, the other one, they're all looking at me, they're bad targets. This guy, he's totally lost in his, looks like an iPad he's taking pictures with. Oh, I am totally going to be able to get everything this guy has, and he's not even going to notice. Wherever I zoom in, though, I'm going to want to use as many tricks as possible. Good, strong adjectives and verbs, good similes and other techniques, lots of sense details, focuses on what other people are doing, links to other paragraphs, drawing contrast between those paragraphs, all that good stuff. Then my third paragraph comes, and in this one is my shift. I'm going to shift focus, completely change the thing I'm going to talk about. Maybe I'll imagine how things once were. This picture, by the way, is a picture of the exact same place. It's just the same place about 150 years earlier. So I might imagine how things at this scene once were. I might imagine how things might be in the future. Graders love when you can come up with contrasts like that. Or maybe I could shift to another time and place and draw a comparison that way. Maybe I can talk about how similar yet different this place is to, like, the forest near my house. I could say how the trees there growing remind me of the skyscrapers here in front of me. Or talk about how different it was, how quiet it was back home. Or if I've given my character a strong backstory, I could also shift to a flashback that explains a little bit more about why I'm here now. If I'm a tourist, maybe I'm going to talk about remembering seeing this city in movies when I was younger and wanting to visit it so badly. Or if I'm here on a shopping trip, I could imagine about the person who I'm shopping for and the thing that I want to get for them, like maybe some jewelry for a family member, and I could describe the thing that they want to get and kind of fill out my backstory a little bit more. And after I do that, however I've shifted, I'm then going to return my focus to the present. And I want to talk now about how this scene again is different from that thing I was just imagining, that different thing I shifted to. Maybe I'll zoom in on something that shows that change in particular, or that particularly links to what I was talking about. So if I was just maybe describing that person I wanted to buy jewelry for, then when I return, I could maybe see a jewelry shop perhaps over in here, and then describe this shop and how useful I think it's going to be. Finally, my last paragraph, I'm going to end it because good writing has a clear start, clear middle, clear end, and I'm going to finish with a clear end. If I've been describing an outdoor scene, like the city center, next I am going to be, say, going inside, like down into an underground system, a subway system. Or perhaps I'll be going into a shop. So I'll have that contrast between the outside and the inside that I'm setting up just as I leave. And as I do that, I will end on a final thought about what I've just seen, some kind of little summary sentence summing up all my thoughts and feelings about this. And that will leave me with this structure here. It's kind of a cyclical structure. It starts with me arriving. I look around. I go somewhere in my mind. I come back in my mind. And then I leave, maybe even leaving the way I came. Like I could come up out of the subway, the underground system, and then I could turn around and at the end leave down by that same system. So that is drop, zoom, shift, return, leave. Why don't you give it a shot now? Do the same thing. Use that structure and write a description of a busy city center as suggested by this picture. If you're looking for a starter sentence, try something like, I stepped out of the filthy subway tunnel and I was surrounded by a sea of people. Good luck.